Welcome back this evening. You've found your way here again, to the quiet hour when the world exhales and the air feels lighter somehow. Outside, the wind has started to move through the dark, brushing across the fields, whispering through the branches, carrying everything that didn't need to stay. If you listen closely, it almost sounds like it's speaking to itself. Just the wind, remembering. Tonight's story is called The Lantern That Remembered the Wind. It's about a light that never truly went out, a small flame still burning where the air moves slow and old songs pass between the hills. They say the lantern has been standing there longer than any house or road, older than the names people once gave the sky. It flickers softly, not because it's weak, but because it's listening. So let the noise of the day fade. Breathe easy. Let the wind outside find its way through your thoughts. For now, there's nothing to do but follow that small, steady light. Let's begin. I first saw the lantern from far away. It stood alone on the plain, its light trembling like a slow heartbeat against the horizon. The wind had been steady for most of the night, curling low over the grass, carrying the scent of earth and rain. Nothing else moved out there. Only the tall blades bending in unison, a sea of motion without sound. As I walked closer, the ground grew uneven, small rises and dips shaped by years of weather. Each gust carried a different sound, a low hum, a faint whistle, sometimes a hollow sigh. It wasn't the kind of wind that chased things away. It circled back on itself, tracing the same invisible path over and over, as if it couldn't quite let go. And somewhere within that rhythm, the lantern's flame continued to flicker, not fighting the wind, but moving with it. The post it hung from was weathered smooth, the wood pale and splintered. The glass around the flame was cracked, fogged by time and dust. But the light itself was clear, steady in its motion, alive in its patience. Every time the wind pressed against it, the flame leaned, then found its balance again. It felt less like watching fire and more like watching something breathe. I stood beside it for a while, listening to the air. The wind changed directions often, but it never lost its shape. Each gust seemed to recognize the lantern, brushing past like an old friend. Sometimes, when the gusts grew stronger, the flame stretched high and thin, reaching out toward the sound, a greeting, or maybe an answer. And though it made no sense, I couldn't shake the feeling that the lantern remembered every breeze that had ever touched it. The longer I watched, the more I realized how long it must have stood here. Maybe someone once lit it to guide travelers across the plain. Maybe they never returned to put it out. Or maybe it simply decided to stay awake, long after the world forgot it. Whatever the truth was, the wind seemed to know, and it wasn't telling. I stayed beside the lantern until the wind began to shift again. The sky above was pale gray, the kind that hides the stars but never quite turns black. It felt like standing inside a breath that hadn't been finished. There was no moon, but the air itself seemed to glow faintly, caught somewhere between dusk and dawn. The light from the lantern bent through the fog, carving slow-moving patterns across the grass. I found a stone nearby and sat down, wrapping my arms around my knees. The wind slipped past, brushing my cheek with cool fingers. It carried a rhythm, soft and deliberate, almost like the sound of someone humming just out of reach. The melody didn't repeat. It wandered, changing with every gust, but somehow it all belonged to the same song. The lantern seemed to sway to it, the flame bending as though it were keeping time. I closed my eyes for a while and let the sound move through me. It was easy to forget where I ended and the air began. Each shift of wind felt like a thought being carried off before I could hold it. Somewhere deep in the plain, something creaked, a low rhythmic groan like wood turning slowly under pressure. I opened my eyes, expecting to see someone there, but the land was still empty. It came again, the same long sigh, this time closer, followed by the faint sound of chains rattling. Not harsh or sharp, just old. I stood, scanning the horizon, but the fog swallowed everything beyond a few yards. The lantern's flame fluttered, not in fear, but as if acknowledging something familiar. The sound passed soon after, fading into the distance until there was nothing left but wind again. I couldn't tell if I'd imagined it, but the lantern leaned once more into the breeze, the light stretching across the wet ground. And I realized then that the plain wasn't empty at all. It was full of things too patient to be seen. I began to walk again, letting the lantern stay behind me. Its glow softened as I moved farther away, shrinking into a small pulse of light in the fog. Each step pressed lightly into the damp earth, the grass whispering against my legs. The air had grown thicker, heavier with the kind of silence that carries weight. Even the wind seemed to pause to listen. I could still hear the faint hum it carried, that wandering melody that never found an end. It drifted through the plains like it had nowhere else to go, circling the place where the lantern stood. Every now and then, I thought I heard a voice tucked inside it, not speaking exactly, but sighing in rhythm. The sound came and went so easily that I stopped trying to catch it. Instead, I just walked and let the wind do the remembering for me. The ground dipped and rose like a frozen sea. I found what might once have been a fence, its posts half buried and leaning. One still held the faint outline of something carved into it, a swirl that might have been a symbol, or maybe just the mark of a bored hand long ago. The wood felt brittle when I touched it, but warm, as if the day had never fully left. Somewhere, the flame of the lantern flickered again. I didn't need to see it to know. I wondered if the wind came here because of the lantern, or if the lantern stayed because of the wind. Maybe one had simply learned to listen to the other until neither could stop. There was comfort in that idea, that even in endless openness, something could choose to stay. A bond held not by purpose but by recognition. A silent agreement between air and flame. I found myself circling back before I realized I'd turned. The wind shifted again, drawing me toward the same place I had come from. It didn't feel like repetition, more like returning to a note that hadn't finished ringing. The lantern waited there, right where it had always been, flickering steadily as if to say, "You're not done yet." And I wasn't. When I reached the lantern again, it felt like the air itself had shifted around it. The fog had thinned into loose threads drifting low to the ground, curling and unraveling like breath on glass. The wind had softened too, carrying only the faint hiss of distant grass. It was quieter now, as if the plain was holding its own kind of stillness for the light. And in that silence, I heard a sound I hadn't noticed before. A low hum, deep and steady, coming from within the lantern itself. It wasn't mechanical. It was closer to a tone you feel in your chest, like the sound of something alive trying to remember how to speak. Each time the wind brushed by, the hum changed pitch slightly, almost tuning itself to match. I leaned closer, the glass clouded with condensation, and caught a glimpse of movement inside. The flame wasn't shaped like any ordinary fire. It twisted in a slow spiral, folding back into itself before blooming again, each motion perfectly timed with the rhythm of the wind. I whispered something then. I don't even remember what. Maybe it was a greeting. The wind answered softly, brushing my collar and ruffling my hair before curling around the lantern. The flame flared in response, and for the first time I saw its light stretch farther than the ground. It rose, faint and weightless, tracing invisible lines into the sky until the fog swallowed them whole. It felt like watching a memory being replayed. Not mine, but something older. A time when this light might have been one of many, when travelers followed its glow across the plains, carried forward by the same wind that now sang to it. Maybe that's why the wind kept returning. It wasn't trapped here. It was visiting something it loved. For a while, I stayed like that, just standing, breathing, watching the air move. There was no lesson in it, no sudden meaning waiting to be found. It was simply a moment that didn't want to end, and I let it linger as long as it would. When the hum finally faded, the wind sighed one last time through the grass, as if promising to return. And I believed it would. After a while, I started walking again, this time circling wide around the lantern. The ground sloped gently downward, the grass giving way to patches of stone. Every so often, the wind would find a new path, sweeping up bits of dust that glimmered faintly in the light. They rose and fell like sparks, though none of them ever reached high enough to fade into the sky. They always returned to the earth like small memories that couldn't bear to leave home. From that distance, the lantern looked almost fragile, a thin silhouette in a world without edges. And yet, it didn't flicker the way most lights do when they're alone. It moved in rhythm with everything around it, matching the breath of the plane itself. You could feel it even without watching, the pulse of something ancient and unhurried. The air here wasn't empty. It was alive in a way that didn't need to be seen to be believed. As I kept walking, I noticed shapes half buried in the soil. They looked like remnants of posts, or maybe fragments of stone markers. Some had faint carvings still visible, arcs and circles intertwined, almost like wind currents frozen in place. It was easy to imagine this plain, once filled with lights, each one flickering against the horizon like small stars resting on the ground. Maybe this lantern was the last one to remember what that sky used to look like. The thought settled deep in me. I turned back to face it, watching its light shimmer through the thin fog. The wind rose again, not with force, but with intention, the kind of breeze that feels like it's carrying words too soft to translate. The flame lifted, steady and graceful, its light stretching toward me. For a moment, the space between us disappeared. There was no distance, no sound, just a quiet pulse of shared recognition. And in that silence, something like peace settled over everything. The flame leaned once more into the wind, and I understood. It didn't resist the air that tried to move it. It danced with it. Always had. The wind softened again, turning warm as it passed across the plain. It no longer carried that distant hum, only the sound of stillness being rearranged. The fog had almost vanished now, leaving behind thin ribbons of mist that clung to the hollows between the stones. The lantern stood unchanged, and yet it felt different somehow. Like the air itself had leaned in to listen and now knew what it had been waiting to hear. I thought about how many nights it must have stood here, unmoved by storms, unseen by travelers, forgotten by time. It wasn't the kind of endurance that demanded attention. It was quiet endurance, the kind that belonged to things that simply refused to stop existing. And maybe that was enough. To be a light that stayed even when no one asked it to. A breeze swept past then, gentler than before, circling me once before flowing straight toward the lantern. The flame lifted slightly, brightened, then lowered again. A small exchange, almost imperceptible. But I felt it in my chest, like the faint echo of a heartbeat that wasn't mine. The wind carried on past me, heading east, the way most winds eventually go. And the lantern kept glowing, perfectly still, perfectly alive. I took one last look before leaving. The plain stretched endlessly behind me, soft and vast and full of quiet memory. Even as I walked away, I could feel the wind shifting around me, not following, just staying near. And when I glanced back, the light was still there, pulsing faintly against the horizon. It wasn't a farewell. It was a reminder. Because some things don't need to move to be part of the journey. They just wait. And when the wind returns, as it always does, they remember. They always remember. So here's where the story ends. The lantern still burns, somewhere out there, patient and unbothered. The wind will find it again, the way it always does, and maybe, in some quiet way, it finds you too. It moves softly through the corners of your thoughts, clearing space for rest. Let it stay for a while. As you lie here, let your breath follow that same rhythm, slow, even, unhurried. The world can wait. Everything that needs to be done belongs to another time. This moment is only for stillness, only for peace. Let the sound fade into distance until there's nothing left but the gentle hum of quiet. The light drifts farther away. The air grows softer, warmer. And soon, all that remains is the calm of the wind remembering itself. Sleep well.